I'm from Plastic, a small team in Poland, and recently we've released our game called Bound. It's for PlayStation VR, and I would like to talk about the problems that we've encountered throughout the development process, and I will show it to you directly from the game. Okay, so the first moment is when I will switch from the regular 2D version to VR. Okay. Okay, should be okay. All right, so the first thing important for VR games is the moment when you're put in the game, and that's very important since like most of the people who didn't have VR headsets on their heads will immediately start to look around like this. It's like, oh, okay, that's great. And if you will, at that moment, place important things in your game, then they will get lost. So it's very important to have this soft entrance to every game, for example, like a menu, so people could spend their first time looking around without any important content. Okay, so I will concentrate first on our camera system. So the game is a third-person perspective game, which is uncommon for VR games. Most VR games currently are first-person perspective because it's like intuitive to be inside the game with like from the perspective of the player. And in our case, we control a character. And what we can say for sure is that we are not that character. And also we are not a passive watcher like in a cinema, because we can move the camera and set it in places when we think it's the best way to view the character. Okay, so the camera system in our game is completely static. It means that it doesn't have any movement at all, but it doesn't prevent you from watching the character all the time. For example, here we cut down the walls, so at every moment you will see the character. Okay, let's go there. Okay, so right now the camera automatically switched to a closer position when you are like too distant from the camera. And this is something new that we implemented based on our players' feedback. That some of the players had problems that they had to manually switch the camera, so we can change this distance. And right now it will be shorter. And it will change by itself, but we can move it even to 0. And it will snap with shorter intervals. So this is the thing with the camera that like we VR game developers struggle to satisfy most of the players, because some of the players are treating our camera system as an intuitive, different camera and not normal camera, which normally follows the character. And we decided to do that because of motion sickness. Normally, when the camera would follow the character, you would get sick very, very fast. And it's because of the accelerations. Our character can change the velocity of movement. So right now she stands, then she can walk. Then she can run, and she can run really fast, and she can even move in such speed. So she changes her velocity all the time, and we can't just move the camera in linear motion, because the acceleration causes motion sickness. Velocity is not a problem, just the changes of the velocity. Okay, so this is the camera system. And next thing, the problematic part that we had to handle in our game is the tutorial. So I will move to another section of the game. It's also important to never ever display just black screen. You need to have all the time even minimal UI, so the player will know that actually something happens and he is not in or she is not in a complete darkness. Okay, so at this place we display this text, press circle button to roll. And the problem is that if there are people who doesn't know the PlayStation controllers, they don't know where the circle is on the pad, or even those experienced players can have problems with that. So you need to show the controller at that point, so people will just like, here's this circle, and here you go. So this is very important, like to having this pad in the real world of the game, no matter if it's like a first-person camera or third-person camera, if it's like a strategy game or puzzler, it's having the actual pad really helps. Okay, so let's move to the next section. And this one was the biggest issue of moving our game to VR. So we started to do the game for VR very early. Like we had prototype, but we also had the first versions of PSVR. And so we could start very, very early, but still the biggest issue were the cutscenes. Okay, so let's switch to 2D mode. Whoa. It's quite blurry. I will re-switch. Oh, interesting. Maybe. Okay, got it. So in 2D, I will show you the same cutscene in 2D and in VR, and you will see the differences. This is like the middle of the game, so you probably won't understand too much from what's happening. Okay, so that was the cutscene. I will load the same part again and switch to VR. Notice how this cutscene was done. It was like a traditional cutscene with multiple camera cuts, cameras from different distances, like like with different lenses, like with long lens, with wide lens, and traditional editing like in movie. And now I will switch to VR. Okay. Okay, and check how this cutscene looks like. So the thing is that we didn't have any camera cuts at all. It was just happening from one place, and we were able to see both characters at the same time. What does it mean? The first thing is that switching those cameras in cutscenes can get you pretty disoriented what's happening. The other thing is that you can't do regular editing, like when you have a camera facing one character, you just animate one character. You need to have all characters in the scene animated all the time, because people can turn around and see what the other character is doing at that point. So if you will just stop the other character, it will look like a kindergarten play. So one kid is talking his sentence and the other is waiting, and it looks really, really bad. So basically, for bigger games with a lot of cutscenes, you will have to do performance captures for the whole set, like capturing both characters at the same time for the best like effects, and like scripting everything, thinking about the whole scene in general, like the whole scene was always shot from a distance. So this is problematic and can actually change costs of productions in a significant way. Now I will show you the next thing, which is quite problematic. Okay. It's here. It's the moments when the gravity shifts. So right now I can see that I'm in sideways to the world. And basically, if you don't have like this moment, if you don't have a reference view on a horizon, then everything is fine. But when you have this view on the horizon and you can feel that the body in your blood is in your feet, and right now it should be like somewhere here on your back, or when you're standing upside down, then you should have your blood in your head. And if you have this view in VR and you don't have it in your body, then you can start to feel dizzy in time. So it will be like a different view on emotions, like a different feeling of motion sickness. But in time, it will get worse and worse. So these are the parts that you need to be aware of, and it's best like to not have the player like in this situation for a longer time. Okay. So I will show you like the extreme example of this changing of a gravity vector. Okay. So it's here. Maybe I will say that at some point of my presentation I will finish my talk and will answer the questions, and I will ask some people from the audience who would like to play the game when I will be answering the questions. So this was like the kind of presentation that I already did, and it works really nicely. So if you would like to try, for example, this tunnel, then you will be able to during the near the end of the talk. Okay, so we have this place over here. I will change the snap distance to larger. Oh, okay, it will be enough. So the biggest problem in this place is that the character will go upside down, and in time you will lose completely control over the character, because the basis of control changes. It's called like the gimbal lock, and you basically don't know where to go. It's like the controls got broken, and we can't do too much about it. But if you will snap the camera, then it gets repaired. So basically you need to go through that this is the best solution. But it's still, it may look very bad from the outside. It's really comfortable inside, even if I do something like this and I can move like faster, it feels really okay inside the headset, but probably you start to suffer when watching it. Okay, so I'll move to the next part. Okay, it's here. So the thing about our game is that it looks very abstract, and this is one of the design decisions that we've made because of Uncanny Valley. And Uncanny Valley works like this, that in robotics it works to represent your emotions towards a robotic person. So basically, if you have a robot that completely doesn't look like a human, for example, like an industrial robot or a toy robot, then you are like feeling okay about it. It's your emotions are pretty okay and you can accept it from the start. But when the robot like tries to resemble human and he's not perfect, you can see like the rubber skin or fake eyes without life inside, then it becomes scary and looks really bad, like from a horror movie. And in VR, the same Uncanny Valley applies for all the graphics. So basically, if you would like to do a realistic graphics in VR, and if you will not make it perfect, like when it's hard to distinguish from real life, then people will think that it's fake. People will think that it's like painted cardboards or something like that. So we decided to make our graphics completely abstract, so people from the start will accept it, thinking that it's just another world, it doesn't exist. And when you make this kind of abstract graphics, you need to think about every element. So for example, this raindrops. Those raindrops are made from like vertical vertices shards. So they are not made in a traditional graphics way, like for example using particles with, or for example recorded planes of rain. We're just making big shards, and those shards can actually hit your eye if you look up. And the other thing interesting is that those shards, when they make drops on the ground, they create PlayStation symbols. And that was something that we've made completely by surprise. We didn't know that it will happen because the code for the shards, for the splats, is like it can have 2 vertices, 3 vertices, 4 vertices, and not vertices but lines. 2 lines, 3 lines, 4 lines, and 5 lines. And think that like 2 lines is a cross, 3 lines is a triangle, 4 lines is a square, and 5 lines is a circle. Let's say circle, but it worked. And we were playing the game for a longer time, and we didn't think about it. And when we put the headset on and I started to look at it, it's like, hey, it looks like PlayStation symbols. And so those are those tiny details that are visible in VR and not in regular game, and it's like it makes the thing so special. Okay, so let's move to another part of the game. Okay, so this is the part of the game where we are exploring the memories of our main character. And it's completely different because it happens in first-person perspective. And here you can also walk in a non-traditional way by blinking. So it's a sort of teleportation, but we are not like making a discrete points where you can move or jump. We are just like allowing to make those small little movements, like in old RPG games like Eye of Beholder, Dungeon Master, and so on. And it works surprisingly well because you can really move fast, like that. Maybe not so fast like in Quake, but still you can walk around without feeling motion sickness at all. And I'm pretty sensitive to that, so I can assure you that it's okay. The very important thing when making VR games is that if you want to have a realistically looking games, this is not a realistic visual style, but we wanted to have those memories felt very realistic. And the thing is that you need to be aware of the scale of elements, so they will be believable. And for example, those elements are the things that we are very used to. For example, this ball, it needs to be precisely like the ball in real world in terms of size, or the pencils, or a clock, TV set, they need to be all measured. And the thing is that you have to be careful about it from the very start of development and just measure all the elements and work in a metric way. Okay, so the next thing is that typical problem in VR is that you can look everywhere. And this is something that it's really hard to handle. You can actually, for example, turn off the screen to black if you do something like this. But imagine a RPG game with a chest, a treasure chest, and you can go to that chest and like move your head inside and see what's there. And for example, there's nothing, and then you open the chest and you get some drops or whatever. So this is something that you need to be aware of, and we just let it go. So let's not try with it. We just like make some effect, and people will probably have some fun at some point, but then they will decide it's like, okay, I have enough fun, let's go and see what's happening. The last thing in this scene, which is very important, is the height of the character. So in 2D version, we are moving at the same height as currently, because we wanted to show the player that he is moving through those memories from the perspective of a child. So his height is about like 1 meter. His eyes are like on a height of 1 meter. But in VR, it didn't work so well in terms of when you were standing and when your character was on a height of 1 meter. That was really bad. And that's why we've decided to just like make the game in it's a game for like a sitting game. So you sit, and actually I don't know if it's really okay, but we still have the natural height. But when you sit down, you are on a 1 meter length. So we solved both of those problems, but it was mostly in VR about the motion sickness, because when you would walk, having your knees in the ground can make you feel dizzy. So that's another thing. Okay. So next thing that we had to be very careful about is the character motion. So our character was motion captured. We captured a real ballerina, but we haven't captured the finger animations. And normally in 2D it didn't matter, because like there was a lot of things going on. But in VR those tiny things matter, because you can see that her palms were like a solid, rigid solid, and she was like completely an artificial character. So we had to animate the fingers for VR version. Okay. And the last camera problem was this moment when you move on the ribbon. And normally it's like a roller coaster, but the thing is that the roller coaster has still problems with accelerations because of the curves. When the curvature of the curve changes, then if you want to stay at the same speed with the character, it will change the velocity to like not fall from the ribbon, because normally it would just like fall off. So we decided to also have this static camera here, but you can change it in a way that, for example, the character will run towards you, and you can follow her with your head. You can look like from left, right, or from the bottom. So you have control over that. Okay. Zoom. And we are reaching the last part of my presentation. So our game consists of the three realms, let's call it like that. This is the unreal world. It's an abstract world that happens in the head of our main character. We've already visited her memories, but now I'll show you the third place, and it's the place that we are calling the real world. Okay, I will run quickly here to not spoil the game. Okay, so this is the third place that the game is taking place in. And this is our character. So at first we wanted to make like a realistic graphics here, but it didn't work in VR pretty nicely. So in the end we also decided to stylize it like in a journey style way. Okay. And like okay, and so there was another problem. Now basically in the 2D version you have this notepad that you can traverse and choose the levels that you can go through. You can go through the levels in any order, and we had the problems in doing this in VR because you could see through her head. So we decided to make this situation when you can see her and you can see the notepad, and you can actually connect with the character that she's looking at the same thing that you do, and this, like, let's say it solves the problem. Okay, the last thing that I would like to talk is a little bit about optimization. So on PlayStation you need to have at least 60 frames per second, and this is reprojected to 120 by the hardware. And in order to do that, you need to like squeeze all the juices from the PS4. So the biggest two optimizations that we do is, the first is it's called near white rendering. On other platforms it's called foveated rendering. So basically you render your eyes 2 times, one with the center of the eye, which is like very sharp, and the other is the outer circle of the eye, which is blurry, and then you combine it, so you put like most of the details inside of each eye. The other thing is the multi-resolution. So basically if you are like almost released your game and there are some places that suffer from the frame rate, then you can use the multi-resolution to like dynamically adapt and change your view. For example, like make the shadows like in a worse quality, or in the end you just change the resolution and like make the frame buffer smaller, but you like move it discreetly, so people will not notice. So in our game there are a couple of places that are running in a really low resolution, but it's like just like a couple of seconds throughout the whole game. But thanks to that we were like able to ship the game with our small team. Okay, so maybe I will load this this tricky place, and I will ask if someone would like to play. If there's someone who would like to, okay, you try it. And during that time, I will answer questions if there are any questions. Okay, so are there any questions? Okay, so. Hello. Okay, so it works like this. There's one button here, you can stretch it, and there's another button here for focus, and that's all. Okay, and the other button is here. Here. I will move your finger. Oh. It's okay. So the controller over here. All right.
I want to talk. Thank you for your talk. Do you think that your game is due to VR is better, like in the VR, and this is going to be a normal practice in future to port or make normal games to VR?
Okay. So you're asking if it's like it will be normal practice to port existing games or like a traditional games to
and
VR?
If you think that especially your game is better in VR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that may happen, but the biggest problem is to communicate to players that your game is also on VR. This is something that we struggle with because we've released the game 2 months ago as a 2D version, and then we've added the VR version, and like a lot of people doesn't know that. So you know, it's like you think that your game will be a good VR game, and you like do that patch 1 year later. And it may be hard to like go to the players and tell them that. So that's one issue. So I think that if you would like to do that, it's better to do it at start and not add later on. So I think that's a better solution. Yeah, but completely. It's like you can do strategic games for sure. Like racing is already there. I think that football games, like the sports, like soccer games, when you see like the characters running on the field, it will be perfect in VR. It's easy to port. The same for like basketball, for example, and such things will be very easy to port. Okay. There's another question. Okay, so maybe someone, like a next person, if he or she would like to try, then can come here.
Hello. You have shown in the first person a way of moving the character. Have you tried some other ways? For example, I think for Doom VR, they want to use a smoke effect for the player to move in first person and not feel sick. So have you tried some other way, and how did it work for you?
Do you have like some specific other techniques that you are like thinking about? Like
So I read some article about Doom VR, and they plan to use not teleport, but actually moving around while covering the ground around the player with smoke.
I heard about
so they
that.
wouldn't get sick. So, but I haven't seen a video because they haven't released it. So I'm wondering if you tried something like that.
Here's the button.
And how did that work for you?
I know what you're talking about, but we haven't tried that. So basically, what we've did at start, of course, was like a continuous motion, but it was really bad, especially when you're strafing left and right. What I was thinking is to. But I haven't checked it out. It was like my latest idea was to use blinking to change the movement from 0 to a linear motion, like with the constant velocity. So there is no this moment of acceleration, because the moment of acceleration is mostly hertz. So this was like my latest idea, but I haven't tested it. And also like the rotation is quite problematic, since for me blinking is perfect, but there's a lot of people that complain about it, and they would like to have a normal rotation around the character. So I guess the best solution for now is to allow multiple options, so the people will like experience every option, and then they will like decide, maybe like based on the feedback from the players, you will know in the future what's the best solution, because currently it's like a big question, what's the best movement solution.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi there. I'm just wondering if you have any plans for a PC version?
Bound is PlayStation exclusive. It was like we were working with Santa Monica Studio on that, so it's like completely PSVR exclusive, and we have like a PlayStation PRO port coming on launch, so it's like a pure PlayStation game. Yeah, but this is something that we are thinking about, like moving to PC.
Hi, I have a question regarding the implementation of the controls. I don't remember if you mentioned it during the presentation. The way you implemented them, is it character-oriented or camera-oriented? I mean, like in 3D Mario, when you press left, Mario goes on the left on the screen, you know? And in the former Resident Evil, when you press left, it's left of the character. That's because they have fixed cameras. And in your game, you have fixed cameras. So what type of implementation you have?
Yeah, it's hard to explain. It's like I encourage you to try it, but yeah, that's the big problem. When you change the camera, then you need to change the basis of where you move. So for this current scheme, when you control the camera by yourself, it's quite easy, but yeah, you can try it right now, because there's a moment. But when we change the camera like to the fixed places by us, then the controls for a moment can get like disoriented, and that's like a common issue. Yeah, so it's still there. You can try it. Okay. Okay, so are there any other questions? Here's another one.
Hi, what do you think about storytelling and VR? Can VR improve storytelling and gameplay experience?
Yeah, definitely. So, based on our game, we've already got feedback that those memories that I was showing, people were writing that in 2D they were actually not so emotionally connected with that, but in VR they were like being there, and like the sound works much better, so they like can feel that they actually were inside of these memories and was like touching them more. So definitely, like I believe that VR will boost the narrative side of the games much more. So I'm sure about that. Okay.
Hello. How are you actually designing the level, the scenes? Are you using VR for that? Or because it's hard to imagine how it looks in VR, so...
Yeah, it's a very, very big problem. So thankfully our game is both 2D and VR, so we could like design in 2D and like change the colors in 2D, and but still when we were like making the final touches in VR, we had to change those settings, and in PlayStation VR it's really, really hard, because you have the settings on one monitor, you have the game on the VR, and you need to constantly move the headset like this, and this, and this. And this is the funny thing, but there's something that is really rigid, like a hard plastic, and when you hold it like this, it hurts a little bit here. So I was thinking that when you go to the GDC and you see some people with those places over here, then they will immediately know that they are PlayStation VR developers. But to seriously answer your questions, we were thinking about a couple of solutions. What Oculus is doing is to display the UI inside VR, which is a good solution. So basically, when we've seen those Unity or Unreal presentations, people were doing stuff in VR, it makes sense. So there were a lot of people complaining, no way I'm going to do this stuff in VR, which will take me 10 times slower than on a TV. Yeah, they're right, but there are some things that you can't do on a regular TV when making VR games. But the other idea we were thinking of was the monoculus. The monoculus is like a headset with just only one eye in VR, and you had the other eye looking at the monitor. So you could be in both places at the same time, switching the parameters and see how it looks in VR. And maybe it's a very funny idea, but maybe it's a solution. But yeah, that's a big problem in editing in VR. Okay. Are there any more questions? Okay, so I think that we can stop right now. Okay, thank you.